Welcome, everyone, to the second session of National Interstate and Vanliner Insurance's 2026 webinar series. Throughout the year, you are invited to attend our webinar series focused on providing education to motor carriers on compliance, updates, technology adoption, claims management best practices, and emerging safety trends in the commercial transportation industry. Our content today will be delivered by Scott Rea, the president of Avatar. Scott's on a mission to solve your driver problem. Scott learned the industry by managing a recruiting department that grew a 175 driver fleet to 375 drivers in 2.5 years. He uses that firsthand experience to ensure Avatar helps you fill empty seats, defend those bogus lawsuits, and bring your drivers home safely. Today's webinar focuses on what we as safety professionals can accomplish with more time. Scott's going to share the benefit of streamlining your operation and maximizing efficiency with the use of AI, allowing you to focus more on people and less on those mundane processes. My name is Chris Steinbauer. I'll be your moderator for today's session. As we go through the presentation, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. At the end, we're going to open it up for a live Q&A with Scott. And please stick around for the end for a special offer from National Interstate and Vanliner. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce Scott Rea from Avatar. Take it away, Scott.
I will, Chris, but I'm not going to let you go without a question. Are you feeling like you got some AI FOMO right now with everything that's moving and shaking in the world?
I would say so. Yes. So a lot of advances in AI, and excited to see and share with our participants today on what you got for us.
Well, I kind of have the same feeling, and so does people in Silicon Valley. So if you feel like you're missing the boat, I think the good news is it's definitely consensus that this is early innings in what is possible with AI and automation, and the little Claude revolution that with Claudebot that started in February is really just kind of starting to unlock like what is possible, and people are starting to dream a bit. So with all that buzz, today we'll start with like what's practical, like what's real out there for us to do today when it comes to recruiting and retention. And so what I know is to be true is that fuel's going up, salaries of everyone's going up, cost of claims is going up. I've been hanging out enough national interstate meetings, so that's the case. But what isn't going up typically? Your budget. And so the question is, how can you do more with less? Because your CEOs, your owners are looking at the cost of the world saying, my goodness, how do I keep up with this? And how can I control the cost of things that I can control, which typically is you and what you can do. And so here's the thing to get excited about is what are the tools out there that are low cost, high impact, and what's going to make you supercharged, superhuman. And so as Chris mentioned, when I was a wee lad 10 years ago, recruiting truck drivers for a living, we focused our energy on the 3 Ps: pitch, placement, process. And so we knew from a pitch standpoint, this is marketing 101 stuff. You got to be unique. You got to stand out. Something that's going to cause people to want to work for you. Placement is where do you go find candidates, and processes has got to be quick and easy for everyone to apply, both for you to process and for them to apply. And so the 3 letters I obsessed over was cost per hire, CPH. And we want to drive that down. And when I looked at like what would drive it down, it's can we spend less money on advertising? Can we increase our conversion rate of candidate to hire? And part of how we do that is we only spend time with the right candidates, what we call the ideal driver. And we want that ideal driver, we want higher intent candidates to apply. And what we don't want is people just swiping right on Indeed to come our way. Those are not people that actually know what it's like to work here or want to work here. And so that caused a lot of time wasting. And so when I wish I was recruiting in 2026 versus 2016 because of all the things we did of staffing people overseas to answer the phone 24/7, the amount of money we gave those people at Indeed, and I'm recorded, so I'm not going to tell you how I really feel about them. There was a lot of wasted energy and manpower that doesn't need to happen today. It's really exciting because it would cause us to have done more, better, greater things. And so when we started, we first said, okay, what is our pitch? And when we looked at ourselves in the mirror, we looked like everyone else. We were a black and white cow. We just talked about the miles, the equipment, the home time, what everyone talks about. Are those things important? They are. Do they cause someone to say, I can't wait to work here? No, they do not. And so how do you stand out? Well, what's changed and what hasn't changed, that's what I've been thinking a lot about over the last year, is with AI, what's changed, but what are the foundation, the fundamentals that haven't? And what hasn't changed is the purple cow is still what's going to make you the number one employer choice for that ideal profile. That ideal profile is still a human being, and we try to categorize them with demographics, where they live, what they like to do. Where they live is demographics, what they like to do, what motivates them, that's the psychographics, a nerdy marketing term. And then what hasn't changed in 2026 is you're still only as good as your reviews. You know where I don't want to eat is a restaurant with 2 stars. And you know where I don't want to work is a company with 2 stars. That hasn't changed. And so what AI has changed and unlocked for you is you can now very affordably analyze your ideal driver profile. And that's really important to get. Who do you speak to? Who do you say yes to? And then more importantly, who do you say no to? Because that's what's crushing your time right now. And you're going to see a lot of images like that purple cow I just shared that was generated in AI. These used to be things we pay a graphic designer for that would take turnaround time, cycles. These are things you can do in 30 seconds that used to be weeks and annoying back and forth. And images and videos is how we tell our story, not words and images. So what does good look like? So I went out to the interwebs and I said, give me a truck driver ad. And what you see on the left-hand side is a template. And that's the problem right there, is it's a widely used template. You can go use them for free off the internet, which a lot of people do, which by nature, if it's a template, it's a black and white cow. And it's all focused on the what. It's not focused on why to move someone. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a national interstate customer that we work with that's looking at how do we stand out. Well, we were thinking about comparing Strimbu with the mega carriers and how they do driver check-ins, have barbecues every month, how they do focus groups, how they give back to the community. Those are things that stood out that were different than the mega carriers that we're having success recruiting from. So for you to find out what's going to be your differentiators, your purple cow, an AI image for the record, that you need to start with the why versus the what. So most people start with the what. The what is pay, the what is the equipment, the what is the home time. The why are the things like you saw with Strimbu, of how they give back to the community, how they prioritize their drivers through focus groups, how they prioritize their drivers through check-ins and barbecues. And so those are ways we captured that why, and now we want to go capture that why with stories. And so how do we get on the scent? Well, we figured that out with Strimbu back in the day by doing a bunch of interviews and looking at a bunch of data and crunching a bunch of spreadsheets. And the thing that's beautiful is, where is AI good at? It's really good at pattern recognition. And so we said, as opposed to looking at spreadsheets, we hit up our new bestie, Claude, and we punched in data from the telematics company. In this case, this customer was Samsara. And we punched in the last 3 years and who was a high quality driver defined by the safety score. Then we went to the applicant data we had in our software, and we said, where were they working before? Where do they live? How do we find them? And what else do you see? Because you're pretty good at recognizing patterns. Let's go. And what came back was a quick little study that really guided the marketing team. And how it did that was, there were some things that were like, oh yeah, but we should totally prioritize that. And then some new findings. So what do I mean? Okay, we knew that the geography was for this company was a local hiring model. So we knew that there was going to be within their area. Not surprising. And we kind of knew that we were having success converting them from Schneider, Swift, CRST, right? That was interesting. And so what this did was cause us to say, wait a minute, where are we spending our money? And we recognized the top priority wasn't here at the OTR to local pipeline. That caused us quickly to call timeout and say, let's reallocate our budget here. Let's go do social campaigns. Let's go do geofencing on top of their locations. Let's make this where we spend the most of our recruiting budget, because we didn't have a lot. We're talking $2,000 a month. You can burn that up in an hour in Indeed if you really want to. They'll very much encourage that. So we've reprioritized our budget based on this kind of hitting us in the face. The second was, and we recognize here, this year, safe drivers, right? The old days, I was looking just at what was producing hires. Now we were able to combine data between hires and who is a high performer. That connection was never made in recruiting. We never were connecting those two dots before, because those systems didn't talk. We didn't have that data. It wasn't easy to analyze in that fashion. The next thing we saw was municipal employees convert well. And we went, oh yeah, we basically have the same job, we just pay more. No brainer, right? So same concept. So now we're going to reallocate our budget over here. And then something that was like a pretty aha moment was, oh yeah, we're totally in a spot that has a ton of bases. We just weren't, and we have some people that have converted from those positions into our world. And we thought, yeah, we're not really making some priority. It's just kind of happening by chance versus with intention. Let's go make a campaign on that. And what I want to highlight is we didn't say what campaigns to do or where it was. Claude saw where we're having success with safe drivers and said, I know where you live. You live near a bunch of bases. You should probably be thinking about that. Right? That was done in 2 minutes versus what would have been weeks, months to conduct with someone in a spreadsheet, hopefully pattern recognition when it comes in. This is where you should start to get really excited about how to go be more effective at spending your money and the stories that you go capture. So just want to put right there, the ideal profile is going to help you spend your money more effectively. Moving on to this next one here. So what did it also, Claude, tell you? Let's talk about the municipal, right? So it told us channels, it told us messaging, it told us KPIs, and it gave us ideas of where to go look. In the case of military, it suggested bases and job boards that we weren't even thinking about, specific to military. And it pointed us in the right direction, again, saving us hours of search and validation. And so back to the Shrimbu idea, we went to people that worked in the military and that served in the military, that are working for us, excuse me. And the people that served had great stories about what it was like and why they value working there. You'll notice here how we tell the story in 2026 has changed. Keep that phone vertical and keep it short. That's how people are consuming information. And so that's how we want to make sure that we tell the story. I did hear a stat that won't surprise anybody. We've done it, human beings. We officially have shorter attention spans on social media than goldfish. Goldfish have a memory of 3 seconds. We can pay attention for 1.5 seconds before the thumb goes up. So that pitch has got to be tight. A purple cow has got to turn ahead, and you got 1.5 seconds to do that, y'all. Let's just pause right there. Why I said images and videos are so critical, because if you're causing them to read, what can you read in 1.5 seconds? Not much. So you got to catch it. Hey, I served in the military. That guy kind of looks like me. All right, I'll give you another 1.5. What are you doing? Right? It is that quick that's happening out there in the decision-making process. So social proof. Y'all remember McDonald's? Might have gone there this week. Do you remember when they used to count the number of hamburgers they sold? It was going up. The whole point of that was called social proof. They're like, look, many people come here. Billions of people come here. Now they just say billions and billions. They have to count because they can't count because it's so high. The whole point is it's safe. We want to do that with your YouTube channel. Just litter the page with testimonials. And it's one we did for a National Interstate customer, Anderson Coach Lines. And they have a ton of great stories where they went above and beyond. Again, people remember stories. If you watch 5 of these things, you're going to cry because they're so impactful and emotional. Right? That is a purple cow versus what you're going to pay and the equipment you're going to make. That is the why, when they went above and beyond for their people. And so things we know, but doesn't always get the time. Recruiting usually gets the time, but the payback is with retention. By the way, image brought to you by Gemini. Gemini is better at making images than the other ones, just throwing that out there. And so the retention cycle is the purple cow. We want to focus on how do we keep them, and it'll be a lot easier to recruit them. That's how we take the 2.5 stars up to 5 stars. And so here's an example. For the record, we didn't use Nick Strimbu's real data, but this is what an activity KPI or a Purple Cow promise KPI looks like. So if we are out there promising in our marketing and recruiting that we're doing driver check-ins, we should be measuring that. And if you can't manage what you can't measure, how can you make sure that we're doing that? So as a leadership level, this is the mentality that you need to have. This will also keep recruiting in line with the right messaging for what's going to keep people staying. And you make sure that your promises are kept. Has anyone ever heard the phrase, happiness equals expectations minus outcomes? And drivers are generally skeptical of recruiters because expectations are here and they know the reality is going to be below. And so just the fact that you are measuring it, these promises, is a purple cow, because I don't know many people that are doing this. This makes sure that your promises are kept. I've heard that before. We know KPIs are key performance indicators. That P is promises kept. So key promises to make sure that we're doing what we say we do. And if you see that in February, it was cold as heck out there, and no one wanted to come inside anywhere, leave their house. Let's not have a barbecue. Let's not force it. But let's have 2 in March so we can make sure we had 12 for the year. It's okay, right? As long as life happens, we're not perfect. But if we're looking at it weekly and monthly, we can adjust to make sure we hit the target and that what we say. This is an important one to take away. All right. It's baseball season, y'all. So Billy Beane or Brad Pitt, depending on who you are and what you're a fan of. If you're not a baseball fan, or a Billy Beane or a Brad Pitt fan, I'm bringing him up because in this movie, Moneyball, or the book, if you're a reader, he works for the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's have the lowest payroll in baseball. They are competing with the Yankees and Red Sox that have 10, 15, 20x the budget that the A's have. This is like you competing with larger players. The previous example, Strimbu, Acko trying to keep up with Schneider, Werner, JB Hunt. Just ain't going to do it. And they're driving up the cost for everyone. And if you're in the bus or the crane space, they're still out there. And indeed, you're in the transportation market and they're driving up the cost per click, the cost per acquisition in that space. So you might say, I don't worry about trucking. You're in transportation, Indeed's categorizing that way. That cost for that job of CDL is going to be going up. So we're all in this ball boat together. What do we do? So what hasn't changed is you still got to organize your world by source, job, location. What do I mean? So going back to when I was recruiting, we had Cleveland, Akron, Columbus, Dallas, Houston, and then we opened up 2 terminals in Indianapolis and York, PA. Wildly different places, wildly different markets. Ton of CDL holders down in Texas. Very finite amount and very competitive in Columbus. And Akron and Columbus are an hour and a half away. And those might have been different planets from the amount that we needed to acquire a qualified driver. Also, we didn't have the same reputation. We weren't as known in Columbus as we were in Akron. And things we know, we were looking for yard jockeys and we're looking for over the road and looking for regional. And the yard jockey job we could fill in a minute. We knew these things intuitively, but you got to know the dollars and cents so you know how much you need to spend for that budget. The beauty is how you go about tracking that these days is so much more effective and you can ask so much more questions. I'll show you in a second. The second thing that hasn't changed. Indeed was evil back then. They're even more evil now. It's all about pay to play. They're not changing that. In fact, they're making it worse with the changes that they're sending our way from the inside. So know that Indeed is going to get more expensive. And so start to think about what are other sources you could be using based on what's working. The other thing I want to call out is that quality drivers are working right now. They're not searching for jobs because they're working. And when they're going to hit you up on the downtime when something bad happens, or period, something bad happens, because people don't really want to be searching. And so what you need to recognize is you got to be there when they're ready to find you. Also, what's changed with AI is that they're a skeptical bunch to start with. Them and the rest of the world is skeptical about what's real and what's AI generated. Now, to be excited, the data that we can use to connect multiple systems, like I shared between hiring, telematics as one example is amazing for what you can do and automate. And then what has also changed in placement is how people search. So we used to go to Google and ask it questions. Tim Brewster, National Interstate, still keeps Ask Jeeves handy. What has changed is ChatGPT owns the consumer market. It's not even close. Google saw that and they started saying, you know, we're going to go away with our blue links when you hit search, and you're going to get Gemini AI mode, and you're getting a summary. And that's the two big places where people are searching on AI. So you got to be optimized for that. And so what do you do with that information? Well, what we said was, I'll start with my source by job by location problem to solve. So, you know, I used to look at dashboards and spreadsheets, and then I started feeding Claude in the last month so that I could say just whatever the question of the day is, like what's going over in Boise? And I'm tired of Indeed, so I'm trying to find some other sources. So what this showed me was when I come over here, my eye goes to, okay, well, what was the most hires? So I see 10 hires over here. Well, I'll be darned, it's that banner outside. That old trusty banner, if you have the right purple cow telling the right story, is still effective. Hey, look, SEO ain't dead because we're optimizing for ChatGPT, also known as AEO or GEO, whatever the kids call it. Hey, look at that. Indeed's bragging about the number of leads, but I'm only hiring one, which is why my cost per hire for that source is going up. Hey, we didn't do any advertising on Facebook, but organically leads are coming in. Maybe we should do some more there. And this is what our little referral program and social media is doing. Not terrible. So just questions that, you know, hey, run that. Hey, and then you could say, hey, Claude, run that back for me in Cleveland, run that back for me in Vegas, wherever your locations are, or start to ask it questions. Where would you optimize? And this is kind of the fun thing, is you can be that broad. So now let's go to the world of the driver. The candidate is out there. They're on ChatGPT or Google, and they're saying, they're asking it for, where should I look? And if you see here, this is what the results look like, right? There's no longer the links for them to decide. They have the sources here, and we're seeing that those sources in Gemini and ChatGPT become more and more opportunities to find places. So when you are creating your, what does this tell you to do? It means you need to optimize your career site for ChatGPT, for Gemini, which is the two places people are searching. And by searching, I mean asking questions, because that's really what AI is. And so you need to make sure that what you post on your careers page, the jobs that you have, are discoverable by ChatGPT if you want to have a shot at showing up there. So how you have that orchestrated and the tool that you use is mission critical if you want to have a shot of showing up in those new searches. So the placement side, kind of recapping that. What's changed, how people search, what hasn't changed, you got to be there telling the story that's relevant to them. That hasn't changed, that will never change. So the final P, process. So we want to turn up the automation. And my challenge to this group, when I'm out talking with folks in safety and HR in transportation companies, there's a general sense that of like, I got to do all this myself. Like I don't, I don't trust machines. I don't trust AI. I want to do these tasks. And so my challenge is you don't have to. So let's talk with what hasn't changed first. Number one, despite common belief, applying for a job is not fun. If I'm a driver, I would much rather, during my downtime, doom scroll on social media, watch the ball game, talk with my family. That is way more fun than applying for jobs. Applying for jobs is not fun. Speed to respond. Again, because it's not fun. If you're the first, if you grab them and grab their attention, they're okay and willing to stop their search as long as you keep going fast. Second you slow down, they get back out there because they're not happy, right? They want to make a change quickly. The AI has changed our brain and our expectations to go quickly. So what has AI changed? Well, back in 2024, we started experimenting with AI recruiters answering the phone with the question, would drivers actually interact with this thing? And the answer is they are, and they kind of expect it because it's been so prevalent in the back half of 2025. A lot of companies saw this and implemented this. And the challenge here is you can lean on more on automation than you are today. So what am I talking about? So when we talk about ideally, what does your recruiting shop look like? You've got an expert in each seat. You got someone that's helping you do the budget, making ads, messing with Indeed, making the designs, vetting, doing the screening, ordering the MVRs, doing the interviews, road test. But in the reality of things, it's you doing everything. You're the one-man band, the one-woman army. And where you're spending the most time is right here in this vetting stage. There's a lot of candidates that come in the door just aren't worth your time. So we start looking like what chews up your day, what consumes you. And we just kind of saw this was death by 1,000 cuts. Here's a 2-minute call that interrupted you and they lived in the wrong spot. Here's a 5-minute call that sounded really good, but they just don't have the endorsements that we needed. And we just asked the questions in the wrong order. Whatever it is, these things blow up your day. And this is where you spend a lot of your time. You spend a lot of time also wrestling Indeed and optimizing social media when you should be doing what you do well. We're just talking with people and telling them what it's like to work here, setting those expectations. Let me set the stage here. So what we did was we started playing around in 2024 with agents to answer the phone. And problems that we saw were, well, you're spending time with a lot of people that shouldn't be spending time with you. So let me show you what that sounds like. So that scenario there, this company hired team drivers. In the ads, it would say, now hiring team drivers. 80% of the people didn't want to do teams. That would blow up our recruiter's day, or their minute, right? They interrupted them. And we put this in play. We gave them 7 hours back a week. Little things, big impact. Here's an example of what a qualified driver sounds like. So these drivers are giving us answers. The average length of call is just over 5 minutes. So they're interacting with it, getting the key information, and we're understanding on the recruiting side, should we talk with this person, yes or no? Now, here's one of 24/7. And if you did take this call, if you're like me, stepped out from a family barbecue back in the day, yeah, it'd be annoying, right? And you'd have to go and take a note and listen to what's happening on your behalf on that Sunday at 3:30. So a couple comments there. First, uh, if you heard in the beginning, we started caused us to own to say, hey, I'm a virtual assistant. We don't want to. The general consensus is don't lead someone on, own it, and people are okay with it. Actually, gives the robot more grace. Going back to what was happening before, voicemail. He was excited not to have to leave a voicemail. He was excited not to talk to someone overseas. So these are real conversations that are getting real results. That was kind of lesson 1 there. Lesson 2, you heard that he's who he is. He's a guy that likes talking. We're not getting anything quick out of this person. So that would have been 10 minutes out of my Sunday back in the day to learn that he married, because he needs 5 minutes just to say hello. And so that would have been a full 10 minutes to understand, ooh, well, after all that, you're not coming into town for a month. You may or may not be a fit for the position, right? And off the top of my head, do we have an opening for just local on that? Knowing that customer? Probably not. And so there was an interruption from my Easter Sunday that I wouldn't have, from a family, that for someone that it's a maybe. And it just goes back to, was that worth it? No, I would say no. Your life is more important than that. Your Easter Sunday is more important than that. And so we want to make sure that the time you're spending with is with the ideal person, the right person. You will be less burnout. You'll be more excited because you'll be talking with real people, real candidates that are good fits for you. All right. So setting up the stage for automation. So what happened in that after those calls? All those drivers were then sent a text message automatically to their phone. And they opted in verbally, which we have recorded. That's a big deal for CAN spam laws. So when they say, can we send a text message? They say, sure. They get one right away with a link. What do they do happens with that link? They're going to get driven to the website where they're going to fill out the full compliant application and release forms. Why is that a big deal? It's Sunday at 3:30. If that candidate meets our qualifications, right? He says that, yeah, I'm okay going over the road. I'm okay going regional. That the system there, as you can see, is going to order an MVR, is going to order the PSP, can order the background check. And this is where people in HR safety say, well, hold on, I want to make sure I'm making those decisions. Look, set up the parameters. The world I understand is not always black and white. When it's gray, that's where you come in and make the decision. You're the human in the loop. When you know that it's clean, there are no issues with that MVR, proceed to the next step. There's no reason not to. That way, when you come in on Monday morning, you've got a full application because you gave him the opportunity to apply when he had downtime on Sunday. Then he's also signed the release form. So the MVR, the PSP, the background check's been presented to you. Where you used to have to look, review, decide, click, wait, yes, no. All those things can be yes, no. And that's kind of talk about old school automation. When if something comes back on that MVR that you don't like, that you set in your parameters, pause. Don't spend the money on the background check. That's expensive. And depends on where you live, right? For our friends in Oklahoma, where the state fees are 35, or I don't know what they are these days. They're going up. A background check may be cheaper than the MVR because of the state fees. That's something you can determine by location, so you optimize your budget. So what does that look like in reality? One of our customers and good friends, Jennifer Swiner, who's tough but fair, was willing to tell us, hey, I took you up on the offer. We did the assistant recruiter first, and we used to talk with everyone and look at every candidate. Now we're only looking at them after we've run the motor vehicle report, the PSP, and the background check. That's who we're interviewing. And now we're hiring 10 out of 10 versus spending time with 8 people they weren't going to hire. And so what they've done is they've prioritized their time to people that are further down the funnel, and they're having a much higher conversion rate versus spending time with everybody in the funnel. And I think that's the key takeaway here is, why do I suggest starting with the ideal driver profile and real understanding that person? Because it tells you who to invest in. Be okay running that MVR without talking to them. Because if you really know your ideal driver profile, that's money well spent because you know what good looks like. The reason you may be hesitant to run that motor vehicle report or run that background check without talking to them is you're like, well, I don't really know. That's because you need to get locked in and tighter on your driver profile, which you can do now at a deeper level than you ever could. So other jobs to be done that could and should be automated. is collecting licenses and the information on the license. So let's talk about it from a driver's application standpoint, right? Calls in, talks to the assistant, gets that link. Part of that link will be taking a picture of his or her license. What he used to have to do was type in his address in that application. But if you put that license as early on, take a picture, the system can read it and populate it. And now the driver doesn't have to punch it in, right? It used to be Ringo there with fat fingers on small screens, getting address, history, and everything going, versus having the license, which is a system of truth or a record of truth, updated and prevent him from typing. You're going to get cleaner images of that to confirm down the line. Again, just a job that had to be done to build a DQ file that can be automated. Human in the loop, you just verify the information was recorded properly. The system's going to do its best to validate, to make sure that license, that picture is clean. It's not a picture of the knee that they missed, right? Those validators. If you've done that, if you ever been on the phone, going overseas, validating your passport, same type of stuff. So cleaner data coming in. Same thing with medical cards. Jennifer, at first was saying, verifying in the National Registry isn't a big deal. And then she started thinking, well, actually, I do have to get a picture of that. I got to go take that registry number. I got to go to the site. I got to type it in. I take a screenshot of it, and I'm putting it in a drive somewhere versus having a system read it, scan it, go to the registry site on your behalf, take a screenshot, bring it back in the system, and put it right there next to the medical card for you to review and say, hey, get it right. A 15-minute task is now a 15-second task. And all this stuff, when you think about the right task to be automated, none of this stuff is going to blow your mind away. Like, it's not 10 minutes here, or it's not 10 hours back on one task. It's 10 minutes back on a bunch of tasks. That's how this stuff starts to add up. That's the right place and the right use case for AI. So, Chris started the conversation with a question, well, what do you do with the time? And when we talk about people in compliance and safety, right, compliance is not safety. Compliance is following the rules. It is intended to be an indicator of safety. But what's going to prevent more accidents is not building a DQ file. It's spending time coaching your drivers, having time in the telematics to review the telematics system to say, Chris, what's going on? You've been driving with us for a decade. Just what I'm seeing isn't normal. Are you okay? That's what I hear good safety directors sounding like. And because there's trust with that person, they can say, I'm coming here to help you. This isn't normal. But if you don't have the time to have that conversation, you can't check in. Because most of the time, what's happening, that example I just shared, it's something's going on at home. He's having issues with wife, someone's sick, someone just got a cancer diagnosis. It's that other flavor of distracted driving that's in his head. He's not looking at his phone. Or maybe he is looking at his phone because he's trying to take calls from a doctor while he's on the road and didn't bring it up. You can start to ask the questions and help them versus have to fire them because you didn't see it coming. A lot of this stuff is predictable. And so what we're talking about is giving tasks so you can use AI in your telematics systems to go help a driver, to go coach a driver, to help save a driver. And then on the expectation side, that retention KPI, those purple cow promises. If you say, well, we don't have time to be tracking that. Well, you don't have time to be tracking that if you're talking with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that applies, if you're looking at every application. So what are you going to do with that time? Dig in on those purple cow promises, make sure they're kept. So when you're out there marketing and bragging to the world of why about you're a great place to work, that it's true. That there's only 4 stars, 5 stars on your sites because people love working for you. So with that, Chris, we'll bring it back up, open for questions. And as you do, I wanted to just give an offer. So I highlighted the value of the ideal driver profile. And I shared how we did that with Claude, with Sam, Sarah, and our driver data. And I'm happy to share the prompt that we use to do that. So just email me and we'll get that prompt your way and walk you through it. Why am I pushing Claude right now and not ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot? The simple answer is Claude has proven in the last 30 days, right? This leapfrogging world is crazy, that they're the strongest at looking for patterns and analyzing data. Claude is your data analyst. Also, You may have heard that ChatGPT, well, now the paid version doesn't share your data. That's still question marks out there. The questionable that is true. It seems that they all have their specialties. ChatGPT owns, and when I mean owns, I mean like high 80% owns the consumer market. Claude is making a strong play for the enterprise, and your data stays within your world. And if you don't have a friendly nerd on your staff to help stand up an MCP server that you can pump data into, there are manual ways to upload it in. The thing that I showed you with the driver recruitment report here, this was a manual download upload. So you can do it. You don't need a resident nerd to help you out, but a resident nerd certainly can unlock data so you can start to jam and ask questions. And it starts at $20 a month. So maybe you could slide that in without the boss looking. And with Claude, it will be the safest. At least that's the consensus at this moment. So, Chris, hopefully that was helpful. What do you think? What questions were out there?
Yeah, so first off, thank you, Scott, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. AI has come, such a long way in the last few years. I think it's only going to continue to progress and increase and really help with our efficiency, and productivity. So excited to see, what's on the horizon. Before we jump into the Q&A, I would just like to ask our participants if they could scan the QR code on the screen, and just take, a minute or so to complete our 4-question survey. Your feedback's incredibly important. It's going to help us understand what's working well with these webinars and where we can continue to improve and make the experience even better. A link to the survey has also been dropped into the chat. But so one question I have for you, Scott, is AI is new to a lot of carriers out there. What are some incremental first steps for someone who's unfamiliar with AI to help them get started?
So the easiest place would be start with the tools you already have. Why? You don't have to learn something new. It'll be easier to have a step there, no extra costs. So for example, we've been working in safety in telematics. So they're the big players out there, Samsara, Netrodyne, Motive, Lytix, Isaac. They all have put in AI and we weren't really paying attention. And we were just like, oh, that was helpful. Thank you. Right when they started, because the problem they solved was that was a whole bunch of alerts that were coming our way. And if you remember, Lytix was like, well, we'll farm that out and have people in India review that for us. Like that was the original AI. And then as those tech players started getting better and better, they allowed us in safety to say, no, this, yeah, you had 100 events, but you need to focus on these 5. Right? And that helped make that job manageable. So I showed some things in recruiting of what we're doing. It would be like, what's your system? What are you doing today? Start there, see what they're using, because the place to be start, Chris, is what is the job that you have to do? And it's going to happen in the system that you're already using. If you're a Microsoft person, start thinking about using Copilot just to ask questions, right? Some things were made easier just to make this PowerPoint, right? That probably knocked off, 3 hours of prep time because it was just easier to put it together. So I would say start there. Then you look at, okay, well, what are tasks that aren't getting automated? Or I would say, start with your jobs to be done and what's chewing up the most of your time. And then of that, look at what are the high frequency. What is happening a lot? What do you have to do a lot of? So a lot of little things, right? The old death by 1,000 cuts. That is where AI is a good place to work. So if your tool that you're using doesn't solve that problem, that's where I would drive your search to go see, well, then how could that be automated?
Awesome. And you mentioned that, at the start, we're a skeptical bunch. And, what advice do you have to evaluate all these different AI products in the marketplace to kind of make sure they're safe and secure?
You should be skeptical. Maintain that level of skepticism. What I share between Claude, Chat, Gemini, and Copilot, let's start with those. Those are kind of the big ones that are getting a lot of notoriety. So most people on this audience are going to be leaning Microsoft, and there's going to be a few of us in the Google space. That is going to be provided in the place that you already work, and it's a good place to say start there, to start to play with it, get familiar with it, no extra cost. and you can feel confident that your data is going to stay where it's at. You should be skeptical about when you're uploading your data into other systems. And so the questions, okay, the standard things we were looking at today for data security, the standard was SOC 2 Type 2 compliance for tech providers. But now there's well, what's this going to do? How are you going to use my data to train other people's data? So the fear with ChatGPT is that if we were to let's take the example I shared, Chris. So we're going to take your telematics data and your hires, you're going to do that analysis I shared in ChatGPT, and you totally could. And ChatGPT would give you a helpful result. What the world believes right now, because OpenAI isn't really admitting this, so this is a bit of we're going with the data that we have. We believe that data is they're using that to train their algorithms. So what does that mean? That means if you upload your data and someone runs a similar analysis your competitor does, your data will be involved in their analysis, making their analysis stronger. So it's not exactly citing you, and it's not going to say you are the resource, but your information will come up in someone else's search. That is the concern out there, Chris. And that's the healthy dose of skepticism of be very careful about what you upload into ChatGPT. And that is why Claude has had a just ripped in February because their play is for enterprise, keeping your data in your world, not sharing it.
Security risks are, definitely, becoming more common. So, I appreciate that insight. And then, really the last thing we had come through was, how are you seeing fleets most commonly use these different free AI tools? What are some examples that you see, most common?
Sure, you're talking about the free AI tools such as Gemini, Cloudwork, etc.
Correct.
So it's let's go with market since we're talking about the topics of the topics du jour. So images for ads is a great one, right? You set to pay a graphic designer. Maybe you're giving a pitch to your boss that you want to go do something. We know that images and videos help make your point better and stronger. And that is a great place to start to take your word, dump them, and say, create an image for me. I've been amazed with that. We have someone on our CS team right now is using a site called HeyGen to create videos. And it was a place of like, well, how can I teach someone this skill? How could I create this course? And I was like, well, here's the information, let's pump it in. So when we're talking about teaching and things that aren't mission critical, like about our operation, our cents per mile, our customer base, our driver information, go nuts. Use the free tools to do that and create images. And there is actually a value, Chris, of stuffing ChatGPT with data, like making it so that you're more, so it does find you, right, for people searching out there. So just general sense of loading it so that you can start to ask it questions. And frankly, for $20 a month per user on Claude, it's basically free to do that. Now, Chris, careful. We're spending way more than we anticipated with tokens. Every time we hit it, it's a couple bucks. And meaning ask a question. And so we were encouraging our people to do it, use it. And we recognize that this is, y'all remember Uber like 10 years ago when they were first doing it? What it cost to get to downtown was $15 and now it's 50, but we're hooked, right? We're not going back. And so that's what's going to happen here. It's cheap now. They're going to get us hooked and then it's going to explode. So that just kind of, there's my word of caution. So to answer your question, creating images, creating visuals are great places to start with the free stuff.
Great example. That intro video we kicked off with, I have to admit, AI did help with that creation.
It should.
But just want to give you a huge shout out again to Scott. Thank you so much, and thank you all for your participation.